Good afternoon. I expected my presentation tomorrow, but I will deliver today. So the topic of my presentation is surface coating of polymer membranes for water treatment, a new approach to mitigate fouling. I'm presenting here Qatar Environmental and Energy Research Institute. It's Hamad in Khalifa University, Doha, Qatar. We will start with a short overview on water status in Qatar, challenges in membrane desalination because Qatar relies on desalination to provide fresh water to the country. And we will discuss types and negative effects of membrane fouling because membrane desalination is one of the most important methods of water desalination. We will discuss briefly surface modification techniques, how to reduce membrane fouling, because membrane fouling is the main problem during operation of membrane plants. And we will discuss membrane coating with polymer for biofouling mitigation, and characterization and antimicrobial properties of polymer coated membranes, and some conclusions. So here our research institute is Qatar Environmental and Energy Research Institute. It's quite a new institute. It was established just a few years ago in 2011. Now it includes more than 170 researchers which are working mainly in the field of energy and water treatment. So Qatar is here, is a small country in Middle East, near Saudi Arabia, and it's a very arid country with very limited water resources. Here in this region, in Malaysia, Thailand, in India, you are lucky, you have a lot of rains. Every day rain. In Qatar, we have one rain per year. So very limited water resources, about only 76 millimeters per year. And to survive, the country, this is Qatar, rely on water desalination. And this is a small country. It's from east to west, it's about 80 kilometers only. And from north to south, it's about 120 kilometers only. And total population is about 3 million. And about 2 million live in Doha, it's the capital of Qatar. So it's a very small, tidy country, but it's very rich in oil and gas resources, and this helps the country to provide fresh water to the people. So Qatar relies on desalination. In this process, we remove salts and other minerals from seawater to produce fresh water without salts and minerals. And desalination, there are two main desalination processes. One is thermal desalination. It's when you evaporate water, like in your kettle, and condense the water. When you evaporate salty water, you will condense fresh water without salt. This is thermal desalination. It's very energy-consuming process because you need to have a lot of energy to boil water and to evaporate water. The second method of water desalination is membrane desalination, and we will speak in our presentation about this method. So currently in Qatar there are about nine quite big water desalination plants which can produce about 1.5 million cubic meter per day fresh water to provide population with fresh water. Of course, both of these processes, both thermal and membrane desalination, they have some problems, like fouling, non-efficient boron removal from water, scaling, corrosion, and all these issues, they increase of the cost of water treatment. So here, the principle of membrane desalination. Membrane desalination, the key element of this desalination is a polymeric membrane. This membrane can reject salt. When you filtrate seawater through the membrane, this membrane can reject salts, and only molecules of fresh water can go through the membrane, and will produce fresh water. The driving force for this process is operating pressure. So we use operating pressure, it's quite high, it's about 50-60 bars, depending on salinity of your water. The higher salinity, the higher operational pressure is required. And for Arabic Gulf water, the salinity of Arabic Gulf is huge. It's about 40-50 gram salts per liter. So the operating pressure is quite high, but still we can use this process. It's called a reverse osmosis desalination process to dissolve water. When you use membrane for seawater desalination, you will have some problems, and the main problem is membrane fouling. During water filtration through the membrane, in seawater we have different ions, different colloidal particles, bacteria, different suspended particles, sand particles. All this stuff can accumulate on the membrane surface, and this phenomena is called membrane fouling. So depending on type of foulants, it can be scaling when you have some inorganic salt, low-soluble inorganic salt like calcium carbonate, calcium sulfate, they can deposit on the membrane surface. You have some colloidal fouling when you have some colloidal particles like colloidal silica, iron oxides, hydroxides. They can also accumulate on the membrane surface. When you have in seawater some organic compounds like humic acids, polysaccharides, proteins, they can also deposit on the membrane surface. And the last type of fouling is biofouling. Because you know that in seawater, especially when you have a high temperature of seawater, 30 degrees, even higher, different bacteria can multiply, grow, and accumulate very quickly. So this bacteria can deposit on the membrane surface and also cause the membrane fouling. And this type of membrane fouling is the most difficult to cope with because microorganisms, they can grow on the membrane surface, and they can relocate from this position to another location on the membrane surface. And after some time, you will have the complete layer from bacterial layer on the membrane surface. And it will sharply reduce the membrane parameters, and it will increase the cost of water desalination. So typical negative effects of the membrane fouling include low flux, poor permeate quality, increased operational pressure, frequent cleaning, and membrane replacement. So here, for example, this is a flux, this is initial permeability. When you have fouling, you will have completely decrease of flux with filtration time. And with time, you will have this as membrane, commercial membrane, completely covered with fouling layer. So of course, uh, there are different methods of cleaning. For example, physical methods of cleaning, chemical methods of cleaning, and you should use these methods very often, depending on type of your seawater, on type of pretreatment. But sometimes these methods are not enough, and you should replace this element with new ones. And this will contribute, this replacement will contribute to a sharp increase in operational cost, up to 20% of this desalination process. This is cost of this membrane. That's why reducing of membrane fouling is very important in the membrane desalination process. One of the main approaches to reduce membrane fouling is to modify the membrane surface. Here you can see the atomic force microscopic image of the membrane surface, polymeric membranes. You can see some pores, and you can see, for example, here some bacterial cells. It's blocked the pores. So when you have a lot of bacteria, the bacteria can deposit and block the pores, and it will reduce flux, and it will add. You will need to apply high operational pressure for water desalination. So one of the main approaches to reduce membrane fouling is to modify the surface of the membrane to repel the fouling materials from the surface. And there are different approaches to modify these membranes. For example, photo redox initiated surface grafting with the membrane surface, different polymers. Surface modification with nanoparticles is quite trendy. Nowadays, different nanoparticles can be used for membrane modifications. And plasma and CVD treatment of the membrane surface also quite popular. But all these methods, it's very nice for demonstration, for lab approach to show how it works. But when you want to scale up and to modify membrane on the large scales, you will have different problems. When I did my PhD degree, for example, with plasma treatment of membranes, I used a chamber. It's about 4 by 4 centimeter. So it was a long time ago, you can believe. Now, after almost 30 years, you can use a chamber 10 by 10 centimeter, for example. So no big difference. So we need to find some solution, to find some methods which can be applied on large scale. And one of these methods is surface coating with polymers and polyelectrolytes, because these methods can be used in commercial scale membrane elements. Here you can see the schematic presentation of these methods. The surface coating of polymeric membranes by layer deposition. So in our labs, we can use just some components of membrane, dip in one solution, for example, polyanion solution, and rinse with water, and dip in another solution in polycation solution. And after this combination, you will have the polymer membrane coated with polyelectrolyte, polyanion and polycation polyelectrolytes. So by repeating this procedure several times, we can coat a different number of layers on the membrane surface. This is for small components, but we can do it on large scale in commercial membrane element when we pump the solution, polyelectrolyte solution from the commercial membrane element, and after change the polyelectrolyte, we can modify large scale, like 7-8 square meters of membranes using these methods. In our experimental work, we used different type of cationic polyelectrolytes, like polyethylamine. Here you can see schematic chemical formula of this polyelectrolyte, and diallyl dimethylammonium chloride. Here you can see the chemical structure of this polyelectrolyte with different molecular weight from about 60,000 kilodalton and 100,000 kilodalton. So molecular weight should be high enough to provide quite good adhesion to the membrane surface. And we use different anionic polyelectrolytes for different types. It's polysodium styrene sulfonate. It's here schematic presentation. It's polyvinyl sulfonic acid. It's polyvinyl sulfonic acid and polystyrene sulfonate. Polystyrene sulfonic acid copolymer with maleic acid. Here, this is a schematic presentation of this compound. And polyacrylic acid sodium salt. This is this salt. Again, we use different polyelectrolyte with different molecular weight, from quite small low molecular weight to high molecular weight, to try to find and choose the best combination, which can provide the best fouling mitigation in our case. So in this slide you can see FTR spectra on the membrane surface, and here you can see the membrane, initial membrane in black. This initial membrane. This peak, this represents the different functional group on the membrane surface, and here you can see the spectra of the modified membrane, and you can see this additional peak. You can see here, for example, for amino group, for sulfur group, you can see here these peaks are absent in the spectra of the initial membrane. So we have here the strong indications that after deposition we coated our membrane with some polymer layer. And we try to use different combination, different pairs of cationic and anionic polyelectrolytes to have the highest degree of modification. Degree of modification, it means it's difference in weight of initial membrane and after modification, and we wanted to have the highest degree of modification to entirely cover the membrane surface with polyelectrolyte layer. When you have low degree of modification, you have maybe some part of the membrane you covered with polymer, but some part of the membrane maybe you have no polymer. But with high degree of modification, you cover all the membrane surface with polyelectrolyte. So here you can see that for different polyelectrolyte pair, you can have different degree of modification. For green bars, is much higher degree of modification for this polyelectrolyte pair comparing with brown one. And we provide some explanation why it's happened, why we have different degree of modification with different polyelectrolytes. It depends on the intermolecular forces which interact between the membrane surface and polyelectrolyte. Usually, our membrane surface is negatively charged in water. So when you apply first polyelectrolyte layer, also negatively charged, you have only hydrophobic interaction, which responsible for deposition of this polyelectrolyte of the membrane surface. In case when you use for first coating stage positively charged polyelectrolyte, in that case both hydrophobic interaction and electrostatic interaction responsible for deposition of this polymer on the membrane surface. So in this case, you have double effect, electrostatic plus hydrophobic interaction. So in this case, you have higher degree of modification with first polymer layer, and in total, in this system, you have higher degree of modification compared with this system. So we can play with degree modification by selecting some polymers with different charge and different molecular weight. We found that when we deposit some polymers on the membrane surface, we can change the contact angle on the membrane surface. For those who working in the colloidal science, you know the contact angle is the measure of the hydrophilicity and hydrophobicity of the membrane. So when you, for example, when you put a water drop on hydrophilic surface, like on the paper, water just will spread through the surface. But when you put water drop on some hydrophobic surface, like PVDF material, some fluoroplast polymer, this water will keep the drop of water will keep its shape. So the higher contact angle, it means high hydrophobicity. The lower contact angle, it means higher hydrophilicity. And for membrane, we wanted to have hydrophilic membrane, because for hydrophobic membrane we have higher fouling and also less flux, less water flux through the membrane. So for our membranes, we wanted to have hydrophilic membrane. So we wanted to reduce this contact angle. And you can see here, this is initial membrane, and after deposition of, this is two types of membrane, NF90, initial membrane, and NF90 after deposition of 4 polymeric layers. And this is another membrane for seawater desalination, PW30. This is initial membrane, and this is modified membrane. You can see clear difference in contact angle. So modified membranes more hydrophilic. It means less contact angle. So by applying this approach, by coating membrane with polyelectrolyte, we can reduce contact angles. We can make membrane more hydrophilic, and in this case, we can reduce membrane fouling. It's also very interesting data presented in this slide. We measure zeta potential of the membrane surface. You know, this zeta potential is the measure of the electrical charge of your surface. So the higher surface charge of the membrane, and if a membrane has some charge, and the fouling molecules or foulings also has the same charge, we can expect some repelling of these foulings from the membrane surface. So we wanted to increase surface charge of the membrane. And here, for example, by applying different positive and negative polyelectrolytes, we can switch surface charge of the membrane from negative to positive and back. By applying different polyelectrolytes, we can change the surface charge of the membrane, and it's also important to prevent deposition of the fouling on the membrane surface. In this slide, you can see the atomic force microscope images of the membranes. These are the membranes. This is initial membrane, NF90, non-filtration membrane 90, and modified membrane with different number of polyelectrolyte layer. You can see here that the roughness of the membrane decrease when we apply different polyelectrolyte on the membrane surface. And roughness of the membranes is the difference between the highest points of the membrane surface and the lowest points of the membrane surface. So for membrane fouling, this is also important parameter, but because when we have higher roughness and we have this rough structure, the more foulings, molecules and particles can accumulate in these valleys. And when we have smoother surface, so we have less accumulation of these foulings on the membrane surface. So by applying this layer by layer polyelectrolyte deposition, we can decrease membrane roughness. This is a measure of membrane roughness, and this is initial membrane, and this is modified membrane with different number of polyelectrolyte layers. So we can reduce surface roughness from 28 nanometers to 10 nanometers. So it's almost 3 times we can reduce roughness. It's quite good reduction of surface roughness. And so the smoother surface morphology is expected to improve the anti-fouling capability of the polyelectrolyte coated membrane when we apply it for water treatment. What is also important, for example, for when you modify membrane, you always deposit some additional layer on the membrane surface. So, and you will increase the thickness of the membrane. And you know that when you increase the thickness, it's not very good because you will have higher resistance to water flow through the membrane. So we wanted to preserve the thickness of the deposit layer as thin as possible. And here you can see this is the thickness of the initial membrane. This is cross-section of the membrane. And this is the thickness of the deposit layer. It's quite low, less than 1 micrometer. So the total thickness of the membrane is usually 150, 200 micrometers. So the thickness of the deposited layer is only 1 micrometer. It's very low, and it will help us to preserve quite high flux flow membranes. Here you can see some data on water flux through the membrane. This is flux, and this is operating pressure. This is initial membrane, an F90, and this is modified membrane. So for modified membrane, flux, of course, is lower comparing for initial membrane, but it's not big drop in flux. It's quite good value. And for this NF270 membrane, this initial membrane, and this is after modification. So we're still in the good range of water flux after modification with this method. And here, it's very also interesting data. Here you can see the confocal images of the membrane surface after growth of some bacteria. In this case, is Pseudomonas bacteria. This is surface of initial membrane. So we put this membrane in this bacteria suspension. We kept for some time, and this is initial membrane, and this is membrane with coated with polyelectrolyte. And you can see different colors, green and brown. Why is that? This is because on the surface of this initial membrane, these Pseudomonas cells, they are alive. They are a green color. When the surface, the bacteria cells dead, they are in brown color. So you can see a modified membrane can kill all the bacteria on the membrane surface because of some antimicrobial property of the polyethylenimine. So you can see here clear difference in number of alive and dead cells on the membrane initial and after modification. And these antimicrobial properties of this membrane can help us to reduce membrane fouling, membrane biofouling. What is important for this method of membrane modification? So when you apply membrane for water treatment, sooner or later you will get some fouling layer on the membrane surface. It's practically impossible to prevent membrane fouling. We can reduce to some extent, but completely prevent is very difficult. But in this case, for example, when we coat our membrane with polymers, polyelectrolytes, we can choose some condition. We can change pH of the solution. We can change ionic strength of the solution. And when our membrane get fouled with foulants, we can remove this polymer layer with attached fouling from the membrane surface, and in this case, we can clean the membrane. So we can use this membrane repeatedly, and we proved this with some experimental data. This is resistance of the initial membrane. This is after fouling after coating with polymers, and this is after coating and fouling with sodium alginate solution. And when we apply, we rinse with cleaning solution, we can sharply reduce the resistance of the membrane. So resistance of the initial membrane and after cleaning is almost the same. So we can regenerate the properties of the membrane. And this is very important issue with this method of membrane modification. So we can regenerate membrane, we can do it multiply times, and we can repeatedly use our membranes. So some conclusion of this work. So we prepared different types of membrane, non-filtration membrane, coated this membrane with different polyelectrolyte. We found that using this method, we can reduce surface roughness of the polymeric membranes. We can tune the surface charge of the membrane. We can change it from negative to positive. We can increase hydrophilicity of the membrane. And we, by incorporation of some polymer with antimicrobial properties, we can reduce a number of live cells on the membrane surface, and in this case, we can reduce the biofouling of the membrane. And additionally, these polyelectrolyte layers can be used as a sacrificial layer for easy membrane clearing. So now we are working on further optimization of the removal of this sacrificial layer from the membrane surface to use this membrane repeatedly. Thank you for your attention. I am ready for your questions. Thank you.